your day at work, right? The emails that you reread 3 times before sending. Sometimes in the meetings, you might know what to say, but the words just don't want to come out. And you look at the work and you may understand it, but you just don't know how to process it. The thing is, the world of work is designed to be one directional, right? Linear, but we are not linear as individuals. And some of us have various ways in which our mind works. So perhaps you have ADHD, maybe dyslexia, and your mind just doesn't work like the mind of others. And you find yourself not coping in a linear environment of work because your brain works in a very different way. So you may try harder, stay later at work, and maybe even hide what you're struggling with. Today we're speaking about what happens when your brain doesn't match the job description or just the way that the job description is created, but also what it costs the person doing the struggling long before anyone else notices. Joining us in this conversation is Lisa Matomola, who's an HR consultant at Job Finder Coach, also a friend of the show. Lisa, it's always a pleasure to have you this morning. Let's get straight into it. What does it feel like for people who may be managing, the brains working differently? Perhaps they're dyslexic, they have ADHD, chronic pain sometimes, migraine, or any other challenge that have, and they're really struggling in the work environment.
Thank you very much, Palesa, and good morning to you. And Benjamin, thank you for actually having me. Happy New Year.
Hey,
and
Lisa.
Yay. Are we still saying Happy New Year, Lisa?
This is the first time I'm talking
That's
to
true.
you.
That is true.
Just courtesy, but thank you for having me and for this amazing conversation. Maybe to answer the question, when we are hiring or during the recruitment phase, normally we, in terms of the Labor Act or the legislation, we mentioned that no one should be discriminated. And even in interviews, there are questions that are discouraged to ask. You don't ask people about the conditions or anything else, except maybe if it's positions or jobs that require physical effort where medical assessments are done, and that is just to check if somebody has like maybe certain condition that may prevent them from carrying that responsibility. And coming back to the conversation around the invisible condition that do affect employees in the workplace, it's not a secret, and it's well known that people have conditions. They have different conditions that some are born with. If you look in terms of some of the conditions that one can be born with, some as you develop, you as you grow, you get to get them, or you get to have such conditions. Some can even be because of life experiences. As you grow older, there are social conditions that can have an impact on one's condition, and that can really affect one's performance in the workplace. So what is important, I think, from a leadership perspective, from a workplace perspective, is for us as leaders to actually be able to understand and pick up some of these trends, because you can also see, like you mentioned, sometimes they receive coaching, they receive feedback, but you actually realize that this individual is struggling. And from a background of psychology, when such employees are identified, they can go through therapy just to also help them in terms of how they can cope, and also understanding in terms of the work that we are giving them. Is it maybe at the right level? Or sometimes some environment that are highly pressurized. If I have dyslexia, for instance, it means that I process things slow. So a highly pressurized environment, deadlines that are urgent will not work for me. So it's important for one to understand, to say, this individual, and it doesn't mean that they are not smart. And the example that I want to give is the founder of Virgin Active. He's actually, in one of his books that I read, he's one of those individual with a condition, but he didn't stop. He actually is a billionaire and has so many companies in terms of if we look at the success. So they're actually very intelligent, very capable, but it just means that the speed, the pace at which they learn might not be at the same as everybody else. So they need a different approach, they need a different environment, and they need a different way of leadership.
I mean, the emotional and professional cost of masking and overcompensating or struggling in silence is a lot. What's the best way to approach it?
May you repeat the question?
I was just saying, at times you have that emotional and professional cost of masking or overcompensating or struggling with silence. How do you approach this whole thing?
The reason sometimes people struggle with silence is the environments in which they are in, environments that are not psychologically safe. So you find that if an environment is hostile, if an environment victimizes you, because if I open up, for instance, to you, Benjamin, you start using that against me. Every time I don't submit or deliver according to your expectation, it's used against me. Or the moment where I'm struggling, or I just need a bit of assistance, it seems like it's an excuse. And I've worked even in Namibia with companies where they say, at times I go there to speak and have conversations or dialogue around these kind of issues, and I'm always received with that, you know what, Lisa, we hear what you are saying, we understand that we need to speak up, but our environments are not designed in such a way that we can speak. There's no trust. So if there is no trust in an environment, if there is no assistance as well, because there must be, if we encourage, one of the things I always tell leaders or managers, supervisors, is that even if we say something to say, we encourage you to speak up. When people speak up, there must be action. Employees want to see that if this employee is struggling with this condition, this is what the company has done. And we know when it comes to this type of conditions, from a medical perspective, they might need support. So what has the company done? Or maybe I need an environment that is not very busy, because you mentioned, Palesa, that I need time to process. So an environment that is too noisy, too busy, open plan, I might need my own office space. I might need to work from home where I'm comfortable, where there is no distraction. I might need and at times, some people even need maybe special equipment for them to work better. So it's very important for companies to also provide resources where possible to assist the individual. But if the environment is not psychologically safe, if we victimize the employees or individuals that open up, then it serves no purpose for us to encourage people to speak up. However, if I, as a manager, I'm not able to assist, there must be procedures. And I know sometimes companies have either referrals, whether it's therapists, occupational therapists, that can assist in terms of helping these employees and helping them to fit in. So the way the companies are designed, and not just from these invisible conditions, even from disability, physical disability. I've had employees actually tell me that, Lisa, I'm on the 4th floor, but I cannot park on the ground. I'm close to the lift. I'm expected to walk at least 500 meters, but I cannot walk that long. So it's a way the environments are designed and what we're actually doing for our employees.
Yeah. You know, Lisa, sometimes the challenge isn't the environment itself, although that is an added challenge, but the challenge starts with ourselves. Sometimes you're just embarrassed to ask for help. And that happens. I mean, I'm thinking of perhaps a woman who's working in a managerial position and she works in a male-dominated environment. And when she has to ask for help, she may feel embarrassed that, you know, the men in that environment feel like, yeah, we knew it. A woman can't do this job anyway. And those are some of those societal silent things that we have to deal with when we have to deal with the challenges that we have in the workplace, especially before we actually reach out and ask for help. So I want to tackle that a little bit, how you can start with that mental challenge of yourself or getting over your own barriers before you even ask for assistance. We'll continue this conversation with Lisa Matomola after the break. Stay with us, Lisa. We're coming back after this.
Madapiri pazoshitika. Madapiri pazoshitika.
Madoto oposa 1,500 amene amagwira ntchito yaulere mu zipatala zaboma mdziko la Zambia azanyanyala ntchito lachisanu sabata ya mawa, ndipo Daniel Shabanda kutambasula nkhani.
Madotolo oposa 1,500 amene amagwira ntchito mopanda malipiro apamwezi dziko la Zambia akuyembekezera kuyamba kunyanyala ntchito. Ichi ndi chifukwa chakuti boma lalephera kuwalemba ntchito monga mmene lidawalonjezera. Channel Africa News yalankhulana ndi mkulu wa bungwe la madotolo la Resident Doctors Association of Zambia, Dr. Paul Chiwe, akugomeza kuti madotolo ambiri amene akugwira ntchito mu zipatala zaboma akugwira ntchito yaulere ndipo ali ndi chiyembekezo chakuti tsiku lina adzalembedwa ntchito ndi boma.
zochitika pa nthawi ya 6 koloko kufikira 7 koloko madzulo, lolemba mpaka lachisanu ndi Madaphiri.
Parlez-vous couramment le français? Êtes-vous passionné par la radio? Et êtes-vous qualifié pour travailler en Afrique du Sud? Envoyez-nous votre CV et vos 3 minutes démo en MP3 à @channelafrica.co.za pour avoir une chance de rejoindre la famille Channel Africa. Si vous n'avez pas de réponse après 14 jours, cela signifie que vous n'avez pas été retenu. Channel Africa, la perspective africaine.
On the Move, weekdays, 9 a.m. to midday.
Only on Channel Africa. #On the Move.
All right, we speak about the struggle to actually align some of your personal struggles with maybe what's happening at work, right? And times it's as serious as being a person who has dyslexia, ADHD, anxiety, or even chronic pain, and making sure that you are meeting up the expectations at work can be a lot for you. How do you deal with that? Or maybe we'll take it to an extent to the end of the show. Maybe you're just in the wrong environment for you. Maybe just you're not good with numbers. Maybe that's just not what you were expecting from that entire environment. Lisa Matomola, HR consultant and job finder coaches, helping us on this one. Lisa, I'm interested in that. You know, the fact that you could be in a place where, you are trying as hard as you can, but it's not even maybe you have a condition, maybe you're just misaligned with that particular job. No matter how much you try, the numbers are just too complicated. Things are not the way you are hoping they would be. And you're like, okay, what do I do now? How do you deal with that kind of situation?
Thank you very much, Benjamin, for that question. And maybe just to also take a step back, I just remembered during the break that I actually had a manager in my previous job who was ADHD. And what was interesting is that when you work in a professional services firm, there are rules in terms of how you show up at clients, the do's and the don'ts. And this was somebody more senior than I was, and I could see that when we went to client, the work ethic, because with this condition, sometimes you see like there are things that people do that might look like they are professional, but maybe for that environment it's not. And I started realizing that when you're at a client, you're not supposed to be asking for food, you're not supposed to be doing this. And luckily I studied psychology, so I could easily pick up in terms of those. So what as a colleague, and I think for colleagues, it's very important to also be patient. Sometimes you might feel embarrassed as well, and which Palesa also mentioned, instead of us discriminating to say, why are you doing this, or screaming at them, shaming them or belittling them. It's just what I liked is that at our workplace we had what we call guilt-free conversation. So when we come back, I'll come and talk to the manager and say, when we went to the client, I just want to remind you that the company prohibits us from asking clients food. So maybe I recommend that before we leave, we can always pass by the shop, we grab something to eat. And I started doing that, and you can actually see like that support actually helps. But coming back to your question to say, what if it's not working? And eventually the manager left because the environment was just not designed for them, because so it's the environment is also not forgiving, and Palesa mentioned that sometimes we can't really change this environment to fit the person. I recommend that it's also important to see therapists to actually get aptitude tests. There's psychometric assessment that can be done for you to actually fit, to say where can I best
Sure.
be myself? Because sometimes, and remember, we come from backgrounds where our parents easily determine what kind of careers we follow, and none of
Yeah.
us actually go through these career guidance to also fit in terms of this is my capability, my ability, cognitive ability. So when there is specialist assistance in terms of you're going to a therapist, you're going to a psychologist, you're going to a psychometrist, they can easily say to say at this pace, maybe numbers are not for you. You'll be more in an environment, or you are a numbers person, but as a software developer, more from programming, it's easier for them to fit your personality, your ability. So they look in terms of your cognitive, your numerical reasoning, your verbal reasoning, and all these batteries are available to actually fit you to the right position. And people always excel when that happens. But when we actually just try to say, you know what, I have to be a CA. This is my father's dream. My
Yeah.
sister was a CA. I need to be that. We actually put ourselves in situation, you are like swimming in an ocean and there's a high current, so you are struggling, and at the end you might actually, so you become a poor performer, and poor performance means that you either trouble if you don't have a good manager who knows how to manage poor performance, or they just don't even give you the projects that are up to your level, so you
Yeah.
get excluded. That discrimination becomes an issue, I think, to shorten it.
Yeah, speaking about the managers, what can reasonable accommodation of these employees, how can that actually restore the dignity of the employees, their confidence, and also bring up productivity?
And Palesa, thank you for that question. I just also want to share maybe slightly my own story. So when I got the invitation and I saw that, some of these visible conditions, because some of the conditions that we are talking about, these are like well-known conditions. But myself, I've been in situation, or I'm actually iron deficiency, and for the past 2 years I've been sharing on LinkedIn in terms of how some of these invisible conditions actually affect your productivity. So when I was before I started consulting on myself by myself, I worked in a company, and every month for 2 days I'll be absent from work. Iron deficiency, I was just tired, and there was no pain, but I'll go to a doctor, and I couldn't understand, and this affected, it means that my hours that I needed to be charging, or my absenteeism was actually increasing. And it only later, maybe about 2 years, when I actually understood to say, okay, this is the reason, this is causing, and I started talking about that, and a lot of people, especially women, started opening up to say, you know what, people always ask me at work that I look miserable, I look like I've been hit by a car, and these are invisible conditions that we actually don't talk about. And if you go to a manager and you tell them that I'm always feeling tired, they might just think that you're not sleeping. And I was working on a wellness project where I actually talked about some of this condition, and the managers or the executive team didn't find it funny. For them, it's like, we are in this environment. When we hire employees, we want them to deliver. So it's important for us as employers, as employees, to actually talk about well-being in the workplace. Even when we look at the HR trends, the well-being, the wellness is what is becoming. It's not even about money. People are living for either a rent less, for an environment that is more accommodative. So we need to create our employee wellness design should not just be focusing on the usual stuff that we do, substance abuse, we check our weight and the physical aspect, but we must encourage in terms of if you're struggling with mental issues, for instance. And I remember there was a time our MD, we used to have what we call PIC lunch with the MD, just like random talks. And one day she spoke to us and she said, if you are struggling with something, if there's a condition that you are afraid of talking about, I don't want you to die because you are suffering, or you want to bring your best to work. I want you to also take care of yourself and know that you come first before any numbers, before any productivity. And that, Palesa, changed my life, because after that lunch with the MD, she didn't know what I was going through I actually never spoke about it because of that shame and stigma that you said. I booked myself with a doctor and I was operated. I had surgery. My quality of life improved. I was never absent to work, and I could easily understand. And I started encouraging others. So
Yeah.
maybe it's not my condition, it's someone else's condition. Sometimes we are not actually forced to talk about these things in the workplace, but we must just also, where medical aid allows you, take that first step to say, as an employee, I need help. I'm actually struggling, and
All right.
what doing from
Lisa,
my
we'll
side.
leave it there. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you also for sharing your personal experience. I think always like a personal experience can give more insight to those who are going through the same thing that you once went through in the workplace. It's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me, and have a nice day.
That's Lisa Matomola, HR consultant and job finder coach. So if this is happening to you, you feel like you're not quite coping with the work environment, how are you tackling it? How are you becoming brave enough to say, look, I might be dyslexic, I have a chronic condition, this is what my issue is, and I do want to work, but I'll need a little bit more of assistance. It's 10:30 Central Africa time. Let's move on. Fikile Lingwati has our sports news once again.